Hey everyone, welcome back to another video, and today we've got quite a bit to go through. Microsoft has filed their actual claim through. It's now being submitted. There's a bunch of redacted information. There's a lot of information there that we can go through. We also have expert testimonies completely breaking stuff down, which again, we will go through as well. Now we can come over to the meat of the actual discussion. Microsoft has filed the opposition brief against the FTC's case, and I'd love to be able to read these redacted bits, says Tom Warren, which include Valve's full reason for declining a 10-year COD deal, something PlayStation chief Jim Ryan said in private, and much more. Now, we'll briefly go through this because Foss has actually broken this down very, very nicely, so I do want to go through that in more detail. It says, any concerns that might be raised about the deal, here is what Microsoft has done. Committed to bring Activision games to Xbox Game Pass, a subscription gaming service offering numerous games for $9.99 per month rather than up to £70 per game, which means more people have access to games. Simple as that. $9.99 is a lot more palatable than £70 per game when you can have everything for $9.99. Signed a binding contract to bring Call of Duty to Nintendo, which does not currently have it. Offered Valve, the popular digital PC game distributor, also the biggest, a 10-year deal for Activision content, which Valve declined. And they basically said that they don't need this 10-year deal because they have no fear that Microsoft would ever remove Call of Duty from PC. It makes no financial sense. First, there is no evidence to support the FTC's central theory that Xbox will take COD away from PlayStation. The FTC does not cite a single document or witness even suggesting this will happen. On the contrary, Jim Ryan, the CEO of Sony Entertainment Interactive, said the chief commercial opponent of this deal said privately on the day it was announced. Now, this is redacted, but apparently it's supposed to say that he does not believe for a split second that Microsoft would ever remove Call of Duty from PlayStation because they are the biggest, they hold the biggest market share, and removing it from PlayStation would be financial suicide. So they already know that this will never happen, right? That on its own is pretty disgraceful and embarrassing for Jim Ryan, and it's kind of disgusting, honestly, that he would stoop to so levels where he would tell people, hey, we know that they would never ever do this, but we're going to lie out of our teeth anyway and make ourselves look like pieces of crap just for the sake of it. Nintendo Switch and PCs compete with high-performance consoles. The FTC offers two unduly narrow proposed definitions of its high-performance consoles market. The FTC primarily proposes that PlayStation and Xbox alone compose the entire console market, then alternatively adds Nintendo Switch but still excludes PCs. Both Nintendo and PCs are economic substitutes. That's bonkers under any definition. If you're telling me that high definition gaming is only on the PS5 and Xbox Series X, and that a 4090 powered by a 12900 Intel processor is not, which is way beyond what consoles can do, right? They can get hit 4K 120 without breaking a sweat. They can hit 8K 120 with a bit of breaking sweat on certain games. You're telling me that the current gen consoles that are now struggling to run games at 60 FPS like Starfield are a higher performance console, and that there's no way that PCs can be included in this market? I hate to say it, but are you out of your mind? Are you literally out of your mind? And they're saying that must be considered in any relevant market. Nintendo, there is no basis for excluding. Now, this bit's all redacted. By excluding Nintendo, the FTC inflates Xbox's market share, which basically works to their advantage, right? It also conveniently excludes a key competitor that has thrived without COD. And that's the key thing here. Nintendo has never had Call of Duty, and they have remained pretty much up there, toe-and-toe with Sony all the way through, because they're just doing their own thing, ripping their customers off as they like to go along. Hey, I don't make the rules up, Nintendo does. But the bottom line is, even without COD, they have been extremely successful, extremely profitable, and are doing just fine. So to say that without COD, your company can't survive, that's just not true. But at the same time, the FTC excluding Nintendo, well, that's a political PR play, right? Because they're doing that purely on the basis that if they show that Nintendo is part of that gaming circle and they are fine with the lack of Call of Duty, well, the FTC loses a hell of a lot of ground here, right? Because now the judge is going to say, well, you're saying that Sony can't compete without Call of Duty. Well, how is Nintendo competing without Call of Duty? They're miles ahead of Xbox. So how are they doing it, but you're saying they can't? So by excluding Nintendo, they're trying to avoid that problem. And Microsoft is bringing that conversation into the fold to expose the FTC's, I guess you can say, complete and total bias. If the FTC could establish that a cloud gaming market will develop, it would also have to show that Xbox will be a major player in it. Otherwise, it would have no cloud gaming business to promote through exclusivity arrangements. The FTC cannot substitute that speculation either. It's all speculation. Now, that's basically on this article here. Now, this one over here is the one that I was telling you about Jim Ryan. Apparently, Jim Ryan said something privately on the day the acquisition of ABK was announced that contradicts the claim that Microsoft would withdraw Call of Duty from the PlayStation. And that part is redacted in the filing, as we can see here. It's the same thing that I just read. It's pretty bad knowing that behind closed doors, Jim Ryan is going and saying, we're not afraid, we have no problem, because at the end of the day, we know that Microsoft cannot take the games away from us. We have such a big market share that financially it would be suicide for them and their shareholders would not stand for it. And then to the FTC, they go and cry their tears out saying that they're going to remove it from PlayStation, even though Microsoft has repeatedly said that will never happen as long as there's a PlayStation on the market. And they've made promises, they've agreed to sign documents to confirm this, but Sony had none of it because at the end of the day, it worked for them rather than against them. Now, this is the part that I want to go through in depth because he actually breaks that whole stuff that I've read out down quite well. So I'm going to have a link to all of this in the description below, all the things. So let's just go through this. The US antitrust agencies have rarely sought to enjoin vertical mergers and have lost every recent case when they tried. Indeed, the FTC is asking this court to be the first in decades to find a vertical merger unlawful, which it probably won't, but there's always a chance it will. As for the foreclosures theory, withdrawing COD from rival platforms, they say the court doesn't just have to take their word for it. This is the exceptional case where the court can rely on actions rather than words, and they're referring to Nintendo here, where Nintendo is perfectly fine without any problem, without having COD, sorry. They point to commitment to bring ABK games to Game Pass, COD deal with Nintendo, offer to Valve, and Valve said they could rely on Microsoft. Anyway, various cloud streaming agreements, commitments to the European Commission, but valid worldwide regarding streaming rights and parity offer to Sony. So Microsoft is offering everything they can and throwing everything to be as fair as they possibly can and saying, look, if they can find one justification to say that we would be in a better advantage and Sony or anyone else would be affected by this, or the consumer base who is out there would be any worse for wear, let us know. Because from what we can see here, everyone except for the CMA is saying this is bad. And the FTC is just grappling onto stuff and holding on to the tiniest of things that they want to cling on to hold on to their fight. It's silly at this point. Regarding the legal standard, as I'll explain in Twitter Space in about 9 hours, that is something in which they disagree. The FTC says that it just has to raise an interesting question to get the PI, the preliminary injunction, which is what this is all about. But they still are confident that they will get it. Microsoft ABK points out preliminary injunction is extraordinary and drastic remedy, as courts say. A preliminary injunction is really a last-ditch thing to get pushed through. It's really difficult. It's really rare. It can happen in exceptional circumstances. Whether this constitutes to one is a different matter. After 18 months of investigation and litigation, including 56 investigational hearings and depositions, and the production of nearly 6 million documents, the FTC offers only a minuscule collection of incomplete questions in support for its motion. And this is apparently Jim Ryan said something privately on the day that contradicts what they were saying, which we've already read. Even if the merger were to cause every PlayStation owner that played Call of Duty for as little as 2 hours per month to buy an Xbox, a wildly implausible scenario. No one is going to sell their PlayStation to go buy an Xbox. It's not going to happen. PlayStation just has, I'm sorry, even with Starfield, they just have all the games. Starfield is going to be a great game, but there's just too many great games on PlayStation right now, and their market share and their market strength is just way too strong. Microsoft is going to need 5 or 10 Starfield type games in order to start to gain ground. Not impossible, but you can see how far the margin is. PlayStation would still remain the console leader, would at most put a small dent in PlayStation's massive lead. Defendants are aware of no case, this is what I believe Microsoft is saying, where a court has blocked a merger to protect a dominant firm's position. And that right there is the mic drop. I know he's put it there as well. I'm not just reading that. But the fact is, the FTC is defending someone who has a completely and utterly dominant market share. And they are protecting them by trying to make them stronger. This is not about the consumer. This is purely about protecting either Sony or to cause Microsoft the bloody nose and to make them basically yield. They want to make big tech yield. So it kind of goes hand in hand, protecting Sony and making them yield. Florian says Microsoft and ABK insist that not only Nintendo but also gaming PCs are in the same market, and the FTC even contradicts its own evidence here. Why? Nintendo has been successful for years without COD, as was the dominant PC game store, Valve's Steam. COD not essential, and it's not. As much as people like to say that COD is essential, it really isn't, and Nintendo and PC have proven this for years. The FTC has literally no factual basis for its claim that the merger will harm competition in the supposed markets for multi-game library subscriptions and cloud services. No evidence ABK would put its games on such services. Transactions will benefit consumers. And that's the point here. There is no factual basis. It's all conjecture that this might happen and that might happen. I mean, for all we know, we might start seeing raccoons flying and, taking over the world. Should we all get into shelters and avoid the raccoons that might actually, go on a spree of world domination by them nibbling away at our properties? As ludicrous as my analogy sounds, that is essentially what the FTC is doing here. The focus of the opposition argument is on the lack of merits of the FTC's claims, but they also make an equitable argument. In fairness, the FTC seeks to block the merger, though Microsoft would hold ABK separate and the divestiture further down the road would remain possible. So again, what this is saying here is that the FTC's claims, the argument against the FTC's claims are basically saying that the FTC seeks to block the merger, though Microsoft would hold ABK separate. And what a divestiture actually means is that they would be a separate company from Microsoft entirely with their own P&L and their own they basically remain as they are now, independent, and can do what they want, and are not under the rule of Microsoft. And they're saying that that would remain possible down the road if it really did need to come to that. Consoles now represent the smallest share of video game revenue. More gamers play on PCs, and substantially more play on mobile devices, the fastest growing segment. That is 100% true. In connection with Game Pass giving gamers great value for their money, the filing notes that Sony primarily puts old games in its service, forcing customers to pay a higher price per game fees to access new content. That is again true. If you want to trial any of the new games, you have to have premium, which is on the higher rate. If you want to stream the new games, if you want to stream any of the games that you buy that are new, you will have to be on the premium subscription. You cannot do that on the standard one. Sony fans must see that Jim Ryan is not on their side. Now, I don't know Jim Ryan is all about making money, right? So is Phil Spencer, everyone. So I don't know why that statement's even there. All these companies care about one thing: how to take your money. So I'll ignore that. Idea of cloud streaming of games is described as to let gamers play games on less highly powered and more affordable devices, which is true, particularly salient in less developed nations. Again, true. FTC says market is US only, so this means cloud gaming not that important in US market. FTC says market is US only. I mean, that's crazy if they're saying that the US market is the only important market out there. That's crazy, by completely disregarding all the other less developed nations or just normal nations that would benefit from cloud gaming. Cloud gaming is a good thing. It's not a bad thing. It's a addition to actually being able to play video games. It enables more people to play video games as long as you've got a stable internet connection. They point to recent comments by Sony CEOs that cloud gaming faces difficulties, is tricky in technical and financial terms. And that is what he said. Sony is a gaming giant. Its gamer base is 2 times as large as Xbox's worldwide. I would probably say moving on to 3, and 50% larger in the US, probably more than that as well. Again, the FTC focuses on US as relevant geographic market. Sony dwarfs Xbox on exclusives. It does. It simply does. What exclusives does Microsoft have out at the moment? Not many. When you look at Sony, since the release of the console, they've had tons. But when it comes to Microsoft, I think Starfield, Halo, Forza, Hi-Fi Rush, I guess. I'm not even going to count Age of Empires. I mean, you can technically, but it's an extremely old game. It's been available on PC for so long. And I guess Starfield, which is arguably one of the biggest. I know in the future we may see other exclusive games like Elder Scrolls 6, which we probably will. But for right now, in this current climate, Sony does dwarf them. In addition to those agreements, during the European Commission's regulatory process, Xbox committed to grant streaming rights to Activision games to other cloud gaming services, regardless of whether Xbox ultimately decides to stream those games itself. So that is also a good thing, because they're giving, and like GeForce Now right now, for me personally, is the go-to platform for streaming cloud gaming. It works amazing. It plays all sorts of PC games. It's bring your own game type model. I absolutely love it. I'm paying like a £15 subscription a month, and it's probably the best service I can find out there right now. Xbox xCloud is great, but it's limited to Xbox games. But GeForce Now is a chef's kiss. It works so well. No, I'm not even sponsored by them, by the way. So do take that into consideration. The lone exception is the United Kingdom CMA, but like the European Commission and other global competition authorities, the CMA rejected the FTC's core theories of harm here, tied to console foreclosure and subscription service foreclosure, and they're appealing. Regarding the legal standard, the filing explains that the court must first see whether the FTC's case has merit, which it's going to be difficult. And I believe that's where the FTC is going to lose anyway. I agree. If it had public equities, pro-competitive benefits of merger, and harm to Microsoft game would be considered, which it doesn't. They demonstrate the extent to which PC is an alternative gaming platform to consoles, which is dumb, because it's not. It's all part of the same gaming, world. You can use a controller on PC, and it's effectively a super-powered, high-octane console. That's simple. Literally, if you plug a console into your PC, there is no difference between the way you play your game on a PC or a PS5 or Xbox. In fact, with certain games on PC, you even get DualSense support from the PlayStation controller if they want to add it, which further makes this claim absurd. In 2022, all but one of the top 30 Xbox titles and all but 3 of the top 30 PlayStation titles were available on PC. The fact that Nintendo and PC, that's just exclusivity, that's fine. The fact that Nintendo and PC gaming are differentiated from Xbox and PlayStation in certain ways does not decide the market definition question. The legal standard in the US is to look at all the options consumers have in the event of a hypothetical price hike. Subscription services such as Game Pass or Sony's PlayStation Plus are not their own market, but rather an alternative way for consumers to pay for console, PC, on mobile games that are otherwise offered as standalone buy-to-play or free-to-play games. Again, fully agree. They then reference Pistachio versus Apple, a class action over Apple Arcade that was dismissed by another judge in the same district. Right after I saw the FTC's December complaint, I automatically and independently made the connection with Pistachio. In Pistachio, it was also about whether Apple Arcade was in a separate market from other games. That class action was never seen again. They didn't even appeal. I commented on that case, class action, at the time, and also doubted its merits. The FTC's proposed cloud gaming subscription services market is similarly incoherent, not a separate product. It is a euphemism for a technology that allows for a game to be streamed from an external source or the same source, because on the Xbox or the PlayStation, you can also stream, such as the cloud, rather than downloaded to the device. The FTC's proposed market includes some multi-game subscription services like Game Pass that offer cloud streaming of console games as a feature for subscribers who typically use it to try games before downloading them. Many gamers on Twitter said so all along, which is exactly correct. It's not a separate market. As for the nascent market theory, even assuming that perceived harm to a future market is relevant, the FTC itself has recognized that projecting harm in future markets can be difficult, must be strongly rooted in the evidence, requires considerable evidence, which they have absolutely none of. Microsoft and ABK say the FTC must account for these economic realities, Microsoft's commitments and contracts, in trying to meet its burden of proof, rather than relying on assumptions and simplifications that are not supported by real-world facts. And again, this is where it's all going, right? The fact is the FTC is saying this might happen, and this might happen. Flying raccoons might take over the world. We might have, ninja flying squirrels running around and robbing shops. So we need to increase police forces because that raccoon over there that's on that tree that's chewing on that nut might one day become a burglar or something. So we need to up security. I mean, it's dumb. And yes, my analogies are really stupid, but that's because the FTC's situation here is just as dumb. I'm just trying to prove a point. The only plausible reason why Sony has declined to sign the deal it was offered is not because it fears foreclosure, which is ludicrous. Sony is way too big for that. The PlayStation brand is massive, which it could prevent with a stroke of a pen, but because it believes this transaction will make third-place Xbox a more effective competitor. And boom! That's where it is. Right there. Sony does not want competition. But as gamers have seen, especially with the last PlayStation showcase, without that competition, Sony got lazy. Sony got lazy and delivered their worst showcase possible in the past, 10 years. It was bad. It was going back to the launch of the PS3 era, bad. And that is because they have no competition. So to all you Sony fans out there that say, no, we don't want competition, that is what you're destined for. You want competition because competition brings greatness. And the one thing Sony does when it is under pressure is deliver phenomenal, fantastic gaming products. And that is what the gaming sphere, honestly, has lacked for a while. We've just seen remakes after remakes after remakes. We don't want remakes or remasters. We want new games like The Last of Us 3. It's still part of the franchise, sure, but it's a new game. We don't want to see the 7th reiteration of Skyrim. We don't want to see the 7th reiteration of The Last of Us. And competition enables this. So we do need competition. That day and date releases on Game Pass will be good for consumers. It is, because it allows me personally to play more games. And I'm sure those people that can't afford to pay £60, £70 every other week to buy a game, day and date games helps them to play games. And sure, you're going to get stinkers on there as well. You don't have to play them, but the service still remains. So Sony would rather charge $70 for each new release. Well, everyone's charging $70. But Game Pass is an alternative option that is very, very good. But Sony also have their PlayStation Plus extras now, which is really, really good, really impressive, amazing catalog. So, is a reason to approve this deal because the antitrust laws were enacted for protection of the competition, not competitors. And I think that's where it ultimately comes, and it is where it's important. Sorry, this has been a really long video, but there was a lot to get through. And I think that what's clear here is that this case is going to make or break the FTC's case. It's really important in that regard because if the preliminary injunction is not granted, Microsoft will have free reign. I personally think this will be good for competition. I have almost zero doubt in my mind that Call of Duty or major franchises from Activision will ever come off PlayStation. It just financially doesn't make any sense to do that. It doesn't. The shareholders are going to want to recoup that 69 billion, 69 billion, I don't remember now. But they're going to want to recoup that money. And by taking games off the biggest market shareholder, it's not going to bring the players over. It's not going to bring get people to sell their PlayStations to come over to Xbox. It's not going to happen. Not in any real world. That's my thoughts. Again, sorry this video has gone on for so long. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Let's have that discussion. I'll see you in the next one. Remain legend.